My younger brother, who has high-functioning autism, was very spoiled by our parents. They even canceled my 19th birthday so he wouldn't throw a tantrum. My parents canceled my birthday celebration because of my spoiled younger sibling. I'm 6 feet 6 inches tall, and this all happened when I was 13. I have a brother who's about 7 years younger than me, and he was excessively pampered by our parents after being diagnosed with high-functioning autism at the age of 5. Other than that, he seems quite typical, but he is incredibly spoiled and often gets his way, almost every single time. Anything I had, he also had to have, which meant we had duplicates of nearly everything that wasn't a shared item. Anything he had that I didn't, he would flaunt in my face. When I was 12, I begged my parents for a 3DS for my 13th birthday. I got one, but was told to lend it to my brother whenever he wanted it, or else I'd have it taken away, which happened frequently. When my aunt discovered this, after seeing my parents forcibly take my 3DS out of my hands to give to my brother during one of her visits, she scolded them for such blatant favoritism. They returned my 3DS immediately, then blamed me for the situation after my aunt left. However, they didn't make me give it to my brother again. Instead, my parents went out a few days later and bought another 3DS as a surprise gift for my brother. On several of my birthdays and others' birthdays, my brother made a huge fuss because the party wasn't centered around him, even going so far as to outright state that he was upset because he wasn't getting any gifts or getting to blow out the candles on the cake. My parents learned the hard way that they couldn't enable my brother the way they wanted at those parties, and were actually kicked out of a few for trying. As a result, other kids at his school stopped inviting him to birthday parties altogether. For me, my birthdays were some of the only days that were truly about me because otherwise, my life revolved around my little brother. The year prior to when this story took place, my parents ended up paying more attention to him during my 14th birthday and even asked me if I'd let my brother blow out my candles for me because he was upset and pouting. I refused because I wanted to blow out my own candles. They called me a spoiled brat at first, until my aunt intervened and chastised them for their favoritism again, pointing out how much she noticed my brother getting nearly everything between the two of us just because he's autistic. My parents got no support from anyone else there, other than my brother, who was still crying because he didn't get to blow out my candles. He tried to outright spit on my cake out of spite, but my awesome aunt thankfully blocked him before he got the chance, then scolded him until he ran to my mom in tears. My parents took a lot of heat from the other adults there and promised to never ask me to let my brother blow out my candles again. But they pretty much just went through the motions for the rest of the party. My aunt took over coordinating everything from that point on. The following year, a couple of weeks before my birthday, my parents sat me down and told me they were still going to give me some gifts and a small cake. But my birthday party was effectively canceled to avoid my brother having another meltdown. I told them I couldn't believe they were doing this to me, and they just seemed to shrug it off without a care. So at school, over the next week, I told my friends, my teachers, and even my school counselor. All of them were appalled by my parents' lack of consideration or empathy. The vice principal even found out and consoled me, and all of this got back to my parents through social media. My parents ended up grounding me and began gaslighting me for telling so many people. But that didn't stop me from continuing to tell everyone at school that I was grounded for being upset that my birthday was canceled for no good reason. I guess that made it a lot worse because several of my parents' own friends, along with parents of other kids at my school, called them up or sent them FB messages, basically saying, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Suddenly, I was ungrounded. I didn't get an apology, though. My dad just walked into my room with his arms crossed, told me my grounding was over early, and then walked out. That was it. I thought my party was still canceled because nobody said anything about it, and my brother thought it was hilarious, rubbing it in my face that I wasn't going to get to celebrate. But by the end of the 2 weeks, my parents held a surprise party for me at my favorite restaurant, and then started claiming that was their intent all along. I knew it wasn't from what I'd seen. Everyone was incredibly unhappy with them for what they did, and it showed in any interactions family members had with my parents. So they ended up doing the surprise party to try and save what little of their reputation they had left, but I'm pretty sure they had to pay through the nose that day to accommodate me. I got dinner with all my friends at my favorite restaurant that had a small arcade, and even got the PS5 game system I'd been wanting at the time. I could tell it was all pretty much planned and bought last minute, because my dad had a look about him that my aunt comically described as looking like a moth had flown out of his wallet. My brother, of course, made a huge fuss that I got that surprise party, but with so many of my friends and their parents there, my mom and dad finally put their feet down with my brother to stop his tantrum when he wanted to push my cake off the table. My brother ended up getting a timeout for the first time since he was a toddler, and my mom had to stay with him to make sure he didn't do anything crazy. He did try several times to run to the cake or stack of presents, Who knows what he would have done if not for the fact that at least one adult was always on guard. Even my dad stood guard to keep him away. My mom ended up having to remove my brother and herself from the party entirely and took my little brother to a McDonald's nearby so he could have fun in their play area. I heard later she spent at least an hour trying to get him to come out of the play tube structure, and he only did so because he had to use the bathroom, then tried to run right back in again. My parents never tried to cancel my birthday again while I still lived with them, though they never again tried as hard or spent as much for the remaining 4 years I was under their roof. My birthday parties consisted of a local pizza parlor, a cake without even my name written on it, and never again anything as expensive as a new game system. I don't mean to sound spoiled, but I was a bit disappointed I never got a cake with my name on it again. My aunt called my parents out on that each year, and each year they claimed they forgot to get the cake decorated. I'm pretty sure the reason my name was never written on another cake was because my brother always refused to eat pieces of cake that had someone else's name on it at any party, and they couldn't put his name on any of my cakes, or it would have looked very bad for them to. But the fact that I still got a day that was just about me and not my brother was still fantastic in my book, especially because just about everything else revolved around him. Still living at home, my brother made a fuss, and my mom took him somewhere else to calm him down. I was still required to share my PS4 with my brother, but it was still mine, and I took it with me when I moved out at 18. Little bro did not like that and had a huge fit until my parents went out and bought another PS4 for him. When I moved out, they finally had to deal with how they'd raised my brother to be so spoiled because I wasn't there to help them with him anymore. On his recent 15th birthday, he went berserk on our parents for not getting him a PS6. He is now currently grounded for, I don't know how long, after causing hundreds or maybe even thousands in collateral damage during his rampage. He picked up a chair and just started destroying anything that was in front of him with it, and my parents just looked mentally checked out when I saw them last. My aunt has also told me they confided in her that they wish they could send my brother to military or boarding school in the future because they can't handle the monster they created anymore, but there's no way they can afford that. I'd be lying if I said I didn't find it ironically funny to. Update 1. My parents were thrown out of a child's birthday party because they asked the stupidest thing imaginable. For those who read my previous post about how my parents tried to cancel my 13th birthday, they knew very well what my brother was like during birthday parties that weren't his own, and they tried to enable his behavior in any way they could just because he's high-functioning autistic. Well, that rampant spoiling didn't go well with people outside the family, like at all. This happened when my brother was around 8 years old. A neighbor boy down the street was having his birthday party, and my brother got invited because they were sort of friends. He was also 8. At this birthday party, my parents did the same thing they'd always done. They let my brother have a huge tantrum about being upset over the party not being focused on him. They got so fed up with his whining that they pulled my brother aside to calm him down for the better part of 30 minutes. And when they returned to the party, they tried to talk the host into letting my brother blow out the candles and open presents because he was upset. They even used the phrase, "He's autistic and needs extra help." They were kicked out of the party immediately after the parents said no to the request. And as they were leaving, they called the hosts insensitive. They ended up leaving that party early and making my brother feel worse than ever did. Update 2. My parents were once told by a psychologist that they shouldn't spoil my brother like they had been doing. The psychologist emphasized that children with high-functioning autism need structure and boundaries in their lives, just like anyone else, which includes teaching them consequences for their actions. However, my parents ignored that advice because they were simply too wrapped up in trying to make my brother happy. By the time I was 16, the situation had gotten so bad that my parents were being blamed by extended family for their obvious favoritism toward my brother. It was clear that their failure to treat me and my brother equally had negatively impacted both me and him. So, when I turned 18, I moved out and had a much more peaceful life. I don't think my parents ever really understood why I needed to leave. They tried to be supportive at first, but their behavior kept making it difficult.